Hey folks, Carl here from the RO Bucket. We have an exciting new product out this year, our single post RO unit. We offer it in both a pre-assembled dolly, ready to use, but also a kit. And a lot of folks have been inquiring about the kits, wondering how much work it is to put it together and what all that entails. So what I'm going to do in this video is walk you through a kit installation. We're going to be putting it on a handcart today. In 2 boxes, you'll have your membrane housing and membrane with your membrane already installed, and you take that out of the box. It will have a sticker on it, and that sticker will indicate the flow rate, the flow direction. I'm sorry, and so you want to take note of that because this has to be the inlet has to be a certain way. So again, your membrane's already installed, the lip seal's already installed, the O-rings are already on the caps. This thing's ready to go. So just put that aside until we need it. And the other box is going to contain all the other components you need. So once you get that open, you're going to have a user's manual, which you want to read through really carefully, probably before you even start assembling it, and again after. And then we have our single post parts list schematic, and that's double-sided, so make sure you take a look at both sides of that. So lay that out so you have that to work with. You're going to have your assembly hoses. This is for your inlet and your permeate outlet and your concentrate outlet. So we don't need this right now. We're going to put that to the side as well. This is our high pressure hose. It comes with 8 feet of this. This is going to be used to plumb the pressure side of the system. The other hose, this is only rated to about 150 psi. So this is only used on the low pressure side, so our inlet and then our concentrate outlet after the needle valve and our permeate outlet, all of which are low pressure. Anything high pressure, this is rated for 250 psi and above, so we're going to want to use that for the actual assembly. It's going to come with an extra pre-filter. Put that off to the side as we don't need that for assembly. This is our water filter, pre-water filter, pre-screen. We're going to need that. All of our fittings. Make sure none of those get left behind. We have our pressure gauge. We have our stainless Procon pump with mounting clamp. Make sure you find the mounting clamp in the box before you get rid of anything. Our 3/4 horsepower motor. That's going to come shrink wrapped with the power cable already installed. And we're using a power cable with a switch in line, so it comes pre-wired. All you have to do is plug it in. And the whips on those are pretty long too. Put that to the side. And then also in the box is going to be our hardware for the stainless steel housing. These are retaining clamps for the caps. Our mounting brackets for the stainless housing. Rubber bumpers to hold it away from the dolly or whatever you're installing it on. And then our 4 stainless steel gear clamps to hook up our high pressure hose. This is our 10-inch water filter housing. We're going to send these out with the mounting bracket. The water filter assembly tool. You want to make sure you don't lose this. This is going to be used every time you change pre-filters. We ship these with a filter already installed, and we ship them already ready to use with pipe dope on the threads. It's really important that you keep the threads, not for the purpose of sealing from water leakage, but you want to keep the threads lubricated and also the bottom lip of the filter housing lubricated, just to prevent galling of the 2 stainless surfaces when you tighten this clamp. You will notice that throughout the season, though, if you start to hear it kind of chatter when you tighten it, that means you're going to want to lube that up again. And even like a food grade grease will work fine for that. So put your wrench off to the side. We're going to go ahead and get this motor open. And then we'll begin assembly of this single post RO kit. So the first thing we're going to do is mount our 3/4 horsepower wired for 110 volt motor to our dolly. These can also be wired for 220, but that's going to require you to open this up and change some stuff around. Obviously we don't really recommend that, but if there is a need for you to use a 220 motor, that would work with this system. And that would cut your amperage in half. So we're using M8 fasteners for the pump, 16 millimeters long with nylock nuts, with 4 nylock nuts. So if you were doing this, you would set your pump on the dolly, mark it with a Sharpie, and then drill your 4 M8 holes. So we're going to put these bolts in and snug them up. And again, there's 4 spots on this motor for our bolts. We're using panhead hex Allen screws for that. So our motor's mounted. We put 4 bolts in that. I did 2 just to speed up this process. Next thing we need to do is attach our Pro-Con pump to our motor. To do that, it has a slotted drive on our Pro-Con as well. So you just want to line up those 2 shafts, and it's also going to have a little piece of medium in there just to keep the ports clean. So we're going to want to line that up. In most dollies it'll clear no problem, it'll clear the axle no problem. Get that lined up, and then you got to get the clamp over both. And then once you get that on, you're just going to tighten up the screw to get that in place with a Phillips head screwdriver. So we get that nice and tight. It should be tight enough so you can just kind of rotate it by hand. You don't want to strip the collar out. That's on there nice and tight. Alright, next thing we're going to do is get our pre-filter mounted. That's going to go in 2 holes that I drilled here. When you go ahead and drill that, just hold your bracket up, draw with a Sharpie, and drill 2 M6 holes. We're going to use M6 bolts for this. And the pre-filter is directional. In this application, we're going to come in this way and out this way, so I'm going to mount it like this. So I'm going to take these 2 bolts out. I'm going to hook up my bracket to the pre-filter housing. Then I'm going to install my 2 M6 panhead bolts to attach the pre-filter housing. Next thing we're going to do is mount our stainless steel housing. And before we do that, we need to plumb up the caps. So I'm going to get this dolly out of here for a minute, so we can get the caps, top and bottom plumbing assembly done on this. So for this, you're going to want to look at your plumbing details, specifically the back. It's going to tell us how to put the cap together. So for the top, we're going to want our cross fitting. Into our cross fitting is going to be a 2.5 inch nipple on one side, a close nipple on the other side, a close nipple coming down. We need a bushing for a reducer bushing for the pressure gauge. And then we need our valves. So we'll take our valves. The valves are also directional. So this flow arrow is pointing this way. So I'm going to want to put this on like this. And then on the end of that, it's going to be our plastic push connect fitting. On the other side, we're going to want our recirculation valve pointing this way. We're going to thread that on here. And then we're going to want to do a push connect fitting on the other side. And then our pressure gauge is going to go on the top. And then this is all going to get threaded into the port off to the side. The center port is our permeate port. This is going to go into this port. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a minute and pipe dope all these fittings. I'm going to Teflon tape the plastic fittings. I use Teflon tape on those. I use a quality pipe dope on the rest of the fittings. And I'm just going to get this all plumbed up and taped up. And then we'll move on with the lower housing detail. So once we have our cap ready to go, we're going to thread that into the housing outlet port. Being careful not to cross thread it. And I like to index these like this. So this is directly in front of our water permeate port. What we're going to do next is install our water permeate fitting. So we're going to take a push connect, put about 10 turns of Teflon tape on it, and we're going to thread that right into our permeate outlet port. Alright? And again, these aren't real critical. That's not going to leak because that's not under any pressure. Your permeate outlet is just ambient pressure. Next thing we're going to do while we're here is install our upper housing clamp. Go ahead and take that. Put your clamp over the housing cap. And then install the nuts. And then we'll just kind of tighten those down together. When this is on the cart, if you're putting it on a cart, you're going to want this clamp at a slight angle just so it doesn't interfere with anything. So I like to put it just kind of an angle like that. Now we're going to take our 14 millimeter wrenches here and we're going to tighten up this cap. You want to get this pretty tight to where there's less than a centimeter or so of gap between the two sides of the clamp. Once you get there, you got it tight enough. You don't want this cap blowing off at 200 psi, so make sure you get it good. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is plumb our bottom housing. So to do that, again, we're going to look at our plumbing detail. So when we plumb the bottom, we're going to want to put the water permeate port, which is the center plug. We're going to want to install our 1/2 inch push connect fitting in the center of that. And we're going to go ahead and cap that right off because that's not going to be used because we're going to be drawing permeate off the upper cap. From there, next we're going to install our lower concentrate inlet fitting. We're going to want to take a T fitting. Into that T fitting, we're going to want to put a nipple. We're going to want a shut-off valve on one side. And then the other side of that is going to be a plastic Kynar hose barb. These are good for like 300 psi. Alright, so we're going to get that taped up. We're going to put pipe dope on the stainless fittings. I'm going to use Teflon tape on the hose barb. So we have our bottom components ready to go. Again, I like to use Teflon on anything that's going into plastic. I just have better luck with that than I do using the pipe dope. This is going to go in our inlet, which is off to the side. So this is this is where the sap's going to be coming in. So I'm going to thread that into my concentrate inlet. You're going to want to get these snug. And I'm going to want to point this just like that. So that nipple, if you're putting it on a dolly, should be opposite your gauge face. Alright? And then this valve, this is a drain. This is a drain most of the time we're not even going to use, but at the end of the season, it's nice to have because it's the only way to really get all the liquid out of this vessel. Now we're going to install our lower housing cap retaining clamp. Same way as the front. You can see I'm putting half on the stainless, half on the plastic. So we'll get that installed. We're going to want to face this clamp the same as the other one. Next we're going to install our membrane housing onto our dolly. To do that, we're going to use the stainless steel clamps. We'll get those pre-positioned. These are the same M6 holes. And we're going to use an M6 lock nut to hold that to the cart. Once we get those positioned, we're going to use the styrofoam spacer that is going to be in your kit. That's going to keep this off the cart just far enough for us to clamp this down. I'm going to position this in place, and I'm going to put my rubber bushing behind the housing. That's going to make sure it stays where it needs to. And then I'm going to install my other M6 nut on the other side of the clamp. Go ahead and do the same to the top. Install my rubber bumper. And install my M6 nut. Position this where I want it. Check my bushings again. Bumpers, and then go ahead and tighten that down with a 10mm wrench. Our housing's installed, snug, ready to go. The next thing we have to do is plumb up our water filter housing and our pump. So to plumb our pump, again, we're going to use the plumbing detail that comes with your system. We're going to want to put a nipple on one side of a T, a second nipple on the other end, and then a push connect fitting on that side. On here, we're going to put our pre-filter housing, which has a flow arrow. We want this pointing in. We want it pointing into the assembly. And then on the end of our pre-filter housing, we are going to put a push connect 1/2" fitting. Okay? And this is going to be on the inlet side of our pump. So I'm going to go ahead and get this stuff taped up, ready to go. I'm going to use pipe dope on the stainless fittings, Teflon tape on the plastic fittings. Alright, so we got that ready to go. I'm going to take my inlet fitting, put it on the inlet of my pump. I'm going to get that nice and tight. Now remember, this is a suction side, so this isn't going to be at 200 psi like the rest of the system, but we still don't want any suction leaks. And they're harder to fix because they're not going to be drilled. So make sure you seal those up good. And we're going to put our push connect fitting in the top. And usually we'll just get these pretty much bottomed right out in that fitting. They usually don't leak. This is where our recirculation is going to be coming in when we get that plumbed. After we do that, we'll note the arrow, which is pointing this way. We're going to thread our pre-filter housing on. And again, the point of this little filter is just to keep any big debris from getting into the veins on that Procon pump. So we just want to make sure we protect that. So I'm going to go ahead and get that tight. I'm going to get in there with a vice grip to tighten up that stainless fitting. Got to be careful with these because that plastic one will tighten up before the stainless does. you don't want to snap off the pre-filter, so make sure we get that where we need it. There we go. Straighten our pump back out, and then we're going to put our push connect fitting on the end of that pre-filter housing. This is what our half-inch hose is going to go into. This is where our sap's going to be drawn in. Next, we're going to take a straight hose barb, Kynar hose barb. We're going to Teflon tape that. Get about 10 to 12 turns on it. Thread that into the outlet of the pump. Get that tightened down. That is a 7/8 hex. You want that pretty snug. We're on the pressure side now, so that's going to be at system pressure. So snug that. Next, we're going to take another hose barb. And we're going to get that on the inlet of our pre-filter housing. Do another 10 to 12 turns on that. And we'll get that installed. On our pre-filter housing. Using the right socket really helps get these things tightened down. If not, I'd recommend a box wrench. You can use a pipe wrench, but you're gonna really cut into those plastic fittings. On our outlet side, we're gonna want to use another valve and a 90-degree elbow, like so. So we're gonna pipe dope this stainless. We're gonna put Teflon tape here, and that's gonna go on this side. The reason we're using a valve here is that's an isolation valve, so that when we want to change filters, we can close this off, and it keeps this liquid here from draining out of our pre-filter housing. So that's going to be really beneficial and kind of keep things clean when we do have to do a filter change, you know, maybe in the middle of processing. We'll go ahead and get our elbow on there. Next step, start plumbing up our high pressure hose. So the first connection we're going to want to make is from our pump outlet. You really got to walk those onto those Kynar fittings. They have a really aggressive barb that holds really well. And then we're going to want to cut that right there. We'll throw our two hose clamps on. Get that upper barb on. You want to get that flush. You want to get that in all the way. Once you're done with that, go ahead and tighten up your two hose clamps. Make sure you get your clamps below between the barb on the hose and the hex on the fitting. You don't want it floating on the tip of that barb, you want it below it to make sure these things don't come on. We'll snug it down with a box wrench. We'll do the same on the outlet of the pre-filter housing to the concentrate inlet. When I do these, I like to hook it in the bottom. I like to come up through the axle. Just makes it a little bit cleaner and a little lower profile when you're all done. Like that. come up to here. Put the last 2 hose clamps on. One for the bottom, one for the top. Get that hose seated and install the remaining 2 clamps. Tighten up this one. That's really good. And that's it for our high pressure connections. The last thing we have to do is hook up our recirculation line. That's going to go from the recirculation needle valve down to our pump inlet. We'll get that cut. And then all we have is the remainder of our hose, which is going to run from our permeate outlet here. Cut the section of hose you need for that. Do the same for our concentrate outlet. Let us know if you have any questions after seeing this video. We'll be happy to help you. As always, you can email us at sales@therobucket.com. Thanks.